All right, so here is what we have going on. We are going to do table discussions again, but I'm going to show you one slide to help set the stage for the upcoming discussions. One thing that we really wanted to do, one of the benefits of coming to this meeting, is that we're hearing ideas about physiology programming. We're hearing ideas about what we're doing in the classrooms. And what we want to do is try to marry the two and show that activities we incorporate into the classroom can accomplish some of our programmatic goals. That's what the discussion tables will be in just a second. But we wanted to, it's coming. There it is. Not working any other ways. This was inspired from last year's PMIG conference, and it's modeled after the AAMC suggestions for letters of recommendation. And the Hawkeye colors, you are here, you're the student, you're here. Within the circle, you're going to be doing different things within your courses. You might be writing papers, you're going to be taking exams, you might be doing laboratory activities, experiential learning, but they all support thinking and reasoning, course content, interpersonal competencies. Okay, hopefully, ooh, that was really loud. And intrapersonal competencies. So this is a little bit of a conceptual framework to show how they can all be related. All right, so from there, we'll take a look at the discussions. The overall theme, translating desired course or program goals into specific course-related activities and other activities that might be part of physiology programming. Table 1, we'll talk about scientific inquiry and research skills. Table 2, general professional skills and career exploration. Critical thinking, best practices for assessment, building confident lifelong learners. One of the things I really enjoy thinking about is the self-regulated learning piece. And then advising and successful navigation of the undergraduate research experience. And then lastly, we'll have cultural differences and diversity. So we have about 40 minutes or so to work in our tables, and then we'll move on.
Okay. All right. So we are in the home stretch. We are just actually to the very last session where we'll do some recap, and I have a few other things to share with you that I haven't yet. But we're basically going to use the last hour or so just to get the last little bit of feedback from the group as a whole before we go off as planning committees and working groups this year. And so we have a good sense of our mission and purpose going forward this year before we meet again. At the end of this particular part, we will ask for volunteers who are interested in being on working groups with us to sign up. There's a lined sheet of paper in the middle of every table, and I'll give you the possible options for joining us to work on some projects. So we will ask for that at the end. We'll also have a time at the end to thank our local planning committee and get instructions for those of us who are going to dinner. There are, I think, 21 of us going to dinner, so we're going to get the instructions on where to meet and how to do that also at the end. We have a couple mics in the audience, and this is going to be, again, another time where I ask for a lot of input. And so here's a few things that we want to talk about. So we had a little bit of a discussion about what exactly our purpose is growing, right? From a more grassroots group of a few of us to now a bigger organization, and now people expressing like maybe we could even be more powerful and big and be super fantastic. So we want to maybe talk a little bit about that and how our relationships are playing out with working with other societies, a bit about the structure. And I have bylaws in here, but that's more of a how do we get organized planning committee part. We don't need to get into that too much. I did want to recap with you guys some of the goals that we laid out at the beginning of the meeting, and I haven't reviewed these yet, so we're going to see together how we did at meeting our goals. So building a community and networking with other professionals. I think that gets a check. I think we've done a great job talking to each other and sharing. So that's great. Discussing the roles of our professional societies. We have presentations from our partner groups as well as a couple stations. Working group tables today about that. I'll talk a little bit more about this. Working towards creating the curricular guidelines. We had a good discussion about core concepts and professional skills that will wrap up here, and that's where our working groups will be. Sharing resources. I heard a lot of sharing at the tables, as well as some of our speakers sharing their resources. Jen's student survey data, which I think is really enlightening. So honestly, that's the first time any of us had ever seen any of the data. Jen was, like she said, crunching the numbers just last night. So yeah, yeah. So that was an insane amount of work in data. So thank you, Jen. And the plan for all of this stuff is to have it be shared and be available. So I do want to also share with you some of the pre-conference survey data that you filled out that we have not seen yet that would be relevant. Just so you know that it's there. That'll also be available on the shared drive. Discussing the undergraduate career trajectory and employability skills. I think we hit there. And then we're at this point of discussing the mission statement and the group structure. We did hit a little bit about Claudia's with the collecting data about the core concepts, and I do want to circle back to that before we leave, just to make sure we have some people that are interested in collecting data there. And this kind of data is important. So what I would think about what Claudia presented about the rubrics she created in her own department, not only will they be resources and tools for us going forward, but at least at this stage, it's kind of like a pilot data collection when we write our core concept guidelines to see really what everyone is doing in their department in a meaningful way. So I hope at least a handful of us would be willing to try to tackle that in the department just to inform our work over the next year as we write the guidelines. And then provide the best education and career prep for our students. And so I am absolutely inspired by what I heard here. Just wow to the presentations, wow to the discussion. What a good group of people. So I absolutely think we're on target with all of this stuff. So that's great. The mission statement stuff, I think I'm actually going to skip around a little bit here. So since I want to jump into some data. So I have a few things to show you. So we did have many of you filled out a pretty detailed pre-conference survey. We've drawn on many of those data graphs in the various speaker talks, but a couple key things came up in the hundreds of tabs here that I wanted to just show you quickly. And again, this is available for you on the shared drive folder. We'll resend the link to you in case you've lost it. But one of the questions was, is there a dedicated trained academic advisor in your unit? So 80% of people said yes to that question. And I feel like I'm not sure if we wanted to word that in a different way. I think we were trying to get at, is there a standalone person that's responsible for taking care of all of this stuff versus, are there a series of faculty members in your department that are sort of the de facto advisors? And I think from the sounds of the conversation, most of us are working on the operational model where we have a lot of faculty who are in the seats training and interacting with students versus having a dedicated advisor in the seat. We also ask, and I might have to zoom in on this a little bit, how was your department structured? And let me zoom in a little bit, see if we can see that. So we were talking about, do you have departmental subcommittee or program committees? And it looks like most of us are working on some type of curriculum or departmental committee that's overseeing the programs. A couple people noted having a program director or program head in addition to that. But it looks like we definitely have at least some oversight in our programs for what we're doing. I was interested in this one too. Are there a formalized set of learning objectives for your major? So 64% said yes, at this point our department has those, and the others has said no. And so I think that's all aspirational for all of us to have a unified set of learning objectives, and hopefully as this group is working on writing the guidelines for core concepts and professional skills development, that will inform our departments for that. The other thing that came up briefly was looking at labs and the structure and what people are doing for their physiology labs. So we had a open-ended question, what's the nature of your physiology laboratory course? And we'll zoom in here too. It looks like most people are saying it's some right? We have aligned with what our student interests are. Some human and some animal, a lot of human exercise, human applied, things like there's some people are doing some projects, a couple project-based things. One traditional animal labs, and I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, twofold is having a laboratory experience in physiology of some type something that we would like to list in our guidelines as a best practice? Is that something that all programs are able to do? Is that something that we all want to be able to do? And then also kind of getting a sense of what everybody is doing, right? Some of the animal labs are really quite expensive to do reagents or bench work. How can we get a lot of students through, and what kind of models are we doing for that? So we will be sending out a post-conference survey to collect input on what we want to do for next year. And this came up at a couple different of the tables about the lab structure. So we might ask you if that's something you want to explore more to talk about that. I definitely think the advising piece got a lot of attention too. So I'm thinking these are some of the topics we might get into as we plan our next conference. But at least wanted to show you those couple snippets of data and know that there's a ton more. There are probably 50 different tabs in this Excel document that you could scroll through and see, how many people have research experience, how many credits are in the major. All of that stuff is information that you have provided to us. And I think this is the primary way we're getting data, is by surveying other programs, surveying our students, surveying other faculty. Yeah.
I wanted to add still, if you haven't filled it out, you can still fill it out, and we would love to get your data, because I know it was kind of crazy you've been going from one thing to another. So maybe if you still could fill it out, we would love to have everyone's. We had 30 people that had completed this as of yesterday.
So what I think is, like, these surveys are kind of the best way to do that. So as we're sending out surveys to the community, I think that's a really powerful tool. And so we're really grateful for those of you who are able to take the time to give us this information. And I think the room was just, a pin could drop when Jen was showing her data, like, what are they going to say? How, you could really say, we're very interested in getting that information and sharing that. So thank you for those who have participated. And I think we're going to continue to use that model. I will put out a pitch that none of us are survey experts. We're kind of learning how to write questions poorly. It's like an iterative process. So we're also learning how to use Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey. We're kind of going through a couple different versions. So if you have expertise in this area and would like to help us, teach us, we are very coachable. We're interested in learning. So if that's something you have expertise in, we would love to have your help. All right. So the initial vision of what this group was, seriously, was 4 of us friends sitting around talking to each other about our programs. And at that point, we were just trying to get a sense of what a bachelor's degree program is in physiology. And clearly we've expanded, and clearly we have some support and sentiment for doing a little bit more than that, perhaps. Even maybe a change of name to signify all the work that we potentially could be doing. This was a mission statement, not to wordsmith this in all, but it was just trying to what an initial thing kind of say, like, we're here to just improve our programs in physiology and pre-health, other pre-health majors, whatever we're calling ourselves. And we really want to provide well-rounded training. So disciplinary training, skills training, career success. And those are kind of the key points, and those are the things that are going to be coming up through the guidelines. And so I just wanted to, we have a couple microphones that are going around, see if there's anything striking that we think is missing from this as sort of the mission that we have, or the reasons that you are here. Because if we are going to expand a little bit, we start to wonder what our mission is, distinct from the APS teaching section, distinct from HAPS, distinct from SABRE, distinct from other groups that have similar purpose. So certainly looking at the whole curriculum holistically was something that was missing, and that really brought a bunch of people together to have discussions. So that's definitely a foundation of what we have. But I don't know, I would like to open it up and just get some feedback on what you think about this statement, and what else you think we do. How do you think we're different from these other groups? How are we unique? Where are we going? Let's just get some feedback.
Hi, I think this is great. I didn't complete the whole survey because the survey really was on BSBA degree programs. So If you want data from community colleges, you kind of have to think about how to reword that, since those questions really didn't make sense in our context. But we'd be happy to give you data. And the other issue that comes up on the other survey is we don't have animal use committees. We have, some of us have human IRB committees, but most of us don't have. So using anything that has to do with a live animal, that's a mammal, we can use inverts. But that, so there are some kind of structural limitations, but that would be helpful, especially if we plan on making this open to the pre-transfer side.
So how about the improvement of 2-year programs and 4-year degree programs? Then you're inclusive and right.
So not to just disagree with what you just said, but I would support, I would support the change of the name away from interest group, as we previously discussed. And I do think that continued improvement of undergraduate physiology education to provide well-rounded training and to enhance career success. I think that you can still remain distinctive from teaching of physiology within APS by focusing on undergraduates. And yet then you are inclusive of varying degree programs, but also some people who maybe are on that border or don't necessarily have a physiology degree program, or someone like myself where physiology education is happening in multiple programs at one institution. There could be a better inclusivity by broadening it to undergraduate physiology education.
And Dee, I just want to get your opinion too, for representing kind of, you've seen HAPS and APS develop over many years. Like, having sat through this meeting, what's your immediate reflection about our distinct role, the purpose that we can, or sort of the void that we're filling that's distinct from those groups?
I think the fact that there are a lot of undergraduate degree programs is important, but I think calling it undergraduate physiology education is going to broaden it up. A lot of people in HAPS are teaching combined anatomy and physiology. They're not necessarily trained, most of them, as a matter of fact, are not trained as physiologists and don't think of themselves as physiologists. There are a lot of anatomists in HAPS and people teaching combined A&P. On the other end, recent changes in APS have shifted the emphasis away from undergraduate and K through 12 education. And I feel very strongly that the pipeline is at the undergraduate level and that APS is missing the boat. And, if they're not going to do it, I think we need to pick it up and do it.
Other comments on this part? That's
So
really helpful.
I guess I'm wondering if how our group is different from HAPS. So HAPS supports supports those courses and supports people who teach those courses no matter what program they might be in or their background. They're not necessarily physiology only focused. But I'm just trying to see or figure out that distinction. Did you want to? Oh, Jenny. Okay.
HAPS is really focused on that sophomore level class that's taught at community colleges and most colleges. So it's really not focused on upper division physiology at all. Would Mary Pat and yeah, so it's really just focused. That's where the bulk of the students are.
Like you said, it's mostly anatomy. It's a much stronger anatomy emphasis. So it's A and P with a heavy emphasis on A.
One of the reasons for HAPS doing the anatomy only and the physiology only is as much for credentialing of faculty, because, as I said, most of the people in HAPS do not identify as physiologists, and there have been all these credentialing issues where the accreditation bodies say you have to have 18 graduate credits, and people are teaching combined anatomy and physiology, and they've got maybe they're ecologists, quite a number of ecologists, or microbiologists, or they have the anatomy but not the physiology, or vice versa. And so there are relatively few people teaching physiology-only courses in HAPS. There are a few states like California where they teach what they call splits, but again, they're introductory level courses. So, I mean, the fact that this is looking at physiology across the breadth of undergraduate education, much more emphasis on research and training students to think scientifically. I mean, most of the people in HAPS are pre-health professionals. These are serving the students for whom there is a entering requirement for some sort of health profession school of 2 semesters of anatomy and physiology, whether it's combined or separate. So, to the best of my knowledge, except medicine does not require physiology uniformly. A few dental schools require physiology. Every other health professions program that I know of requires, optometry, all of the PA, PT, all of those have undergraduate requirements in both anatomy and physiology. And that HAPS is not, HAPS and nursing, particularly nursing and the less technical, particularly the med tech and such, that tends to be the population that's served by HAPS. We're looking at a totally different population, I think, in most of the courses that we teach here.
Well,
So if we introduce more experimental setup on human physiology, it will generate a lot of data that will be a basis for future research for precision medicine. So there should be more extensive experimental setup on human physiology that itself will generate a lot of data which is very useful for the future precision medicine or personal medicine. In other way, it also promotes the real research, which can be supported by various organizations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. So that's helpful. Oh, sorry.
Terry?
Here, I'm behind you.
Okay, go ahead. You can take that one.
Oh, thank you. So I like the emphasis on the physiology education, but I want to point out that, at least on its face, it leaves out some of the issues that we were to look at as we came here, such as national guidelines. We had an extensive conversation today about promotion of physiology as a program and so forth. So I could see that being secondary to the educational mission, but I wouldn't want to see it lost. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one other comment. It occurs to me that if you're willing to draw in the people that are teaching individual physiology undergraduate courses and they come into this organization and they learn that there are people that are doing physiology programs, that you could actually enhance the growth of physiology programs at various schools around the country.
Great. Yeah. No, great. I'm glad there's a need. I'm glad there's an interest. I'm glad to be part of this. So good. I think based on some of the some of the discussions I was hearing, we don't need to maybe think and share so much about this, but from what I've been hearing from last year and this year, we were talking about if we did have guidelines, were we targeting a bona fide accreditation series? Were we looking at certification guidelines, or sort of just recommendation curricular guidelines, or just providing resources that already exist for course level and content level objectives? And Jenny's comment about we're not doing a training program, we're doing an education piece. The accreditation programs are much, more, they're a lot more strict in that regard. I'm sort of hearing that we're looking more kinds of for now towards these recommended guidelines, but I definitely want to get some feedback on that. I see some heads nodding. If there's any comments on that part as we start writing these, I would love to hear any thoughts on that.
There would probably be better buy-in at the departmental level if they're curricular guidelines. Then this is what you should do.
Okay. Yeah, other thoughts on that? So
So all the nodding, does that mean everyone agrees with that? If you agree, can you raise your hand? Okay, that helps. Agreeing to guidelines versus accreditation or certification?
Yeah.
Yes?
Okay.
Okay, just to be clear.
Curricular level guidelines.
Curricular level. Right, curricular, exactly. Curricular level.
Very-
That's what I meant. Okay, Barry?
Zoe, do you have a microphone right behind you?
I got okay.
So I also like something about the external view of a program and an endorsement. So while we could have best practices or curriculum guidelines, it would be nice to have this body act like the ambassador program as an external review kind of place and give department heads and departments and programs an endorsement for all their hard work on it. So I wouldn't want to lose that. It just is not an accreditation.
Yeah. So right. That's actually a really good point. And I love this. I love this ambassador program, having people come through and write and talk through that. And I think my immediate thought is, I mean, that's maybe the next year is how to kind of get that part in. So maybe we get kind of the base guidelines and some rubrics and things together and some buy-in there, and then see how we can use that to move towards maybe that. I don't know. Go ahead.
You have to ask Jenny, how long did it take before you started the ambassador program? This is very ambitious. Accreditation that's a huge bailiwick of issues. So it took Pulse a long time before they developed it.
I think we came together in 2012, and then we got an eager grant for 1 year, which was really probably 2013, 2014, and then we just finished our. And it's 2018. Last year we just started. So we think we looked at 8 schools in like 2014, and then we got an RCN UBE for 5 years that started in 2017. So it was 5 years before we got grant funding to do it. So it was being done much like this is with, just our passion and making stealing time from the rest of our lives. But it's really well worth it. But I think the other issue is maybe trying to piggyback on what Pulse is doing with the ambassador program and recruiting a few people from this group to get the ambassador training, and maybe do a little bit of outreach with that.
Okay, but it also took a lot of time to get the rubrics up and to get the rubrics validated, and really the grant funding so that they can go to the schools to do the ambassador program and not a big cost. So, right, and you need a lot of people so that it's not too much work for any one person. So growing the organization and putting some of the goals a little bit further down.
But I think the informal kind of ambassador too of, I've heard Mary Pat say several times, and I'm just looking at, my schedule for the summer, and, many of us will come long distances to just give a talk at university or do something. So there's a lot of informal collaboration that can, if there's just a long-term goal that can happen in between, because I think that we are resources for each other in that more informal sense.
One of the other parts of the sort of set of guidance that I was envisioning on the website, we're already building kind of this resource tab. And some of the things that we've seen on those resource tabs, like HAPS has some learning outcomes and exams already written. We're thinking about programmatic level learning outcomes and assessment tools. And, we have some ideas for how to do that through the Pulse network, through individuals who are making some of those things. We have the PhysMaps exam and the leap up progressions and those things are coming online, a lot of guiding documents and other things out there. We're kind of putting these things together. I think this is the list of stuff that we're finding in pockets around, and we're trying to bring into one place so people can find it. And I'm wondering, is there anything missing from this list that we need to look for or develop?
So one of the things that we should add, if we don't have up already, is all the career information that you provided. So all those links and all those, I think that would be great to have, to be able to just find it on the website.
I think, and you've already mentioned this, but advising resources. I also think that some of the technology resources, I wasn't aware of the e-portfolio platform, for example. And so some of those almost more logistical, how do you implement or how do you do some of these things? Like you were saying, there's a learning curve to survey data. So can we have a file we can just download into Qualtrics to set up to do this assessment? Anything that, because it is sort of an add-on for most of us, anything that can make the logistics smoother or more helpful, that might actually apply to a variety of those things, whether it be assessment or organization, I think could be helpful. Or maybe that's also, a session at a future meeting date of what are the tools that are helping us administer high quality programs.
That's a plus for me. If you have those tools, email them to me, because we've been operating. Sorry, I was just gonna yell. We've been operating like crazy people for a while, and so Erica just emails me and she's like, "Hey, put this on the website." Jen will email me, "This is a great resource." We don't necessarily just know about these things and we definitely don't have the time to spend time reading articles and looking them up. So it doesn't have to be a formal email. You can just send it to me and then I'll try to remember if somebody else is using it and they're like, "Hey, how do you use this thing?" And I'll be like, "Oh, Jen was the one that emailed it to me, so here's Jen's information." That's the only way I think we can really make it work, is if we are sharing in that type of way. So send me emails if you have things that you're using that we don't have, and then I'll try to connect people as best as I can.
So one of the things comes to mind, I didn't have a particular slides set for this, but one of the things I wanted to get to earlier was just getting some quick reflections in terms of these particular resources available. There's a lot of different things, right? Like the HAPS objectives are being written. We have unpacking of core concepts going on over here. We have a couple of different sets of resources that are coming together, and they're clearly related. But I just want to get any thoughts or feedback on, right, endorsing a certain one over the other, or sharing all of them and letting people pick, or kind of where we're going. I don't know if Dee or Jenny, you guys have reflections on how you think the HAPS objectives and the core concepts unpacking are aligning, or any thoughts or feedback for us about how to use both of those synergistically? Either of you guys? Or does anyone have any ideas about that?
Well, the current HAPS learning, and they call them learning outcomes, and I will say I looked at the difference between outcomes and objectives, and every website had a different differentiation. So they're done for this lower level combined anatomy physiology course currently. And so our project is to take the physiology outcomes from there and combine them with a pared down version of the APS medical learning objectives to come up with a list. And it may be a two-tiered list of, after one course, this is where you are. After an advanced course, this is where you are. Yeah. But there's nothing, right now for usability, I would say just download it and see what fits your course.
Yeah. And I think the HAPS objectives are really content-oriented, chapter by chapter and content-oriented, whereas the core concepts are really much more conceptual. But trying to merge that is an ongoing task. But if I haven't already mentioned it, you might want to fill out Joel and Harold surveys. Just one more plug. I tell them I try to get more higher in.
Introduction of computational tools. Introduction of computational tools in the course curriculum, and examining their competency in using the computational tools.
Computational tools. So using computational tools. Okay.
Right, and that's actually a very good point, because our department is going much more into quantitative skills. Students being able to understand R, use of R, and the statistics associated with that. So, but right.
Thank you.
What about just at a larger scale, more broad connection, like mentorship to connect a more expert community with the student community, and outreach to connect both of those two communities with the community at large?
Yeah, mentorship is actually one of the things we talked about earlier, even for amongst faculty, for those of us who need some guidance along the way. So I think that that would be a great thing for us to have as well.
Oh, go ahead, Ruth.
And I'm going to put in a plug for more physiology education research. There's very little actual physiology education research that's published out there. So we need the evidence that these things work, and we need to get it out to our colleagues.
Come to favor.
We need more. We need more physiologists at Sabre and Sabre West because it's dominated by other disciplines in biology, which have their place. But we want more physiologists involved.
Okay, Sabre West is a regional Sabre meeting, which is it doesn't cost as much, and what we're trying to do is an opportunity for more small 4 years or 2 year schools to actually come because they don't have a lot of travel money. So to get them to be able to come. So at Sabre West, it's held at UC Irvine, and it's over President's Day, Martin Luther King in January, whatever the January holiday is. It's a very nice, very friendly meeting.
And I think that relates to the mentorship issue. Yeah, I think that relates to the mentorship issue. I mean, Mary Pat and I, we were having a conversation too, where if you have some educators who maybe are on the tenure track and are also running research labs and are maybe doing cool things in their classroom that they would like to get out, but maybe don't have the time or ability to do it from the educational research perspective, to be able to partner or to say, I would really like to do this. Can someone help me? I'm doing the intervention. What measurements should I make or not? That, I mean, I think at ITL, some of those partnerships try to emerge, but I think this group could also really help with some of that too.
So just in terms of the communication piece, so we now have a formalized listserv to push information out to you guys collectively. We did try to set up a Google group that would allow two-way communication, but there were a number of barriers to that, and only a couple people were really able to do it, so that's not a meaningful platform. I've seen the APS listserv structure. HAPS has a pretty active listserv structure where people are posting back and forth. I think that's something I would really love to do, so I don't know if anyone has suggestions for a good platform for running that kind of sort of a discussion forum, if you were, but through email, not necessarily you have to log in and see what people are posting. But if anyone's familiar with that technology, if has any ideas, please let me know. All right. Like a listserv thing up there. Okay.
I had a comment about community, so I don't want to backtrack. Because I think there's been a big focus on mentorship, which is really important for faculty, but also for students. And then if you think about like recruitment and retention, for a student to feel a sense of belonging and welcomed into a department is so important, and for them to want to come back or feel like their professors care about their career goals, for faculty to demonstrate that they're interested in their students beyond just the fact that it's a bum in a seat. I think that's really important. So if we developed best practices for like how to foster community amongst the department, like amongst faculty, but amongst faculty and students and students and students. So, and we have student clubs, and we have, there's faculty committees and there's student committees that work with faculty, but there's not, I feel like there's not a central place for students to come and hang out and for faculty. And we have goals to do all these things, but to develop a guideline would be good.
So it's interesting. I wish the two people from Oregon unfortunately had some personal things come up that couldn't join, but they've actually just they built a new STEM library with suites that are available for majors. That's like, this is the gathering area for all physiology majors, all 1,500 of them, right? It's a study room, it's a resource room, and that's the place where everyone goes. That's where they find each other, that's where they have study groups, and I think it's an awesome model. I mean, we all don't have the space to do that kind of a thing, but in spirit, right? That's what we're trying to say, and I hear that from my students all the time, like, we don't know each other, we don't know where to go, and our department chair really cares about that, because if people leave and they have no ties to the institution, they don't have kind of warm fuzzies about it, right? They're gone. They're not going to respond to surveys after the fact. They're certainly not going to become donors to the university department sponsor program. So, yeah, it's important. Okay. I do want to mention, this is not something that we'll get deeply into here, but it turns out that we are growing and getting sponsorship and budgets and things, and it looks like we're going to be an organization now officially. So some of the things that the organizing committee is going to have to start thinking about is some structure in terms of do we maintain full independence and become a nonprofit? How do we form partnerships? Is it possible that we partner as an interest group, as a subset of one of the other societies? And I think we've talked a little bit about this. I don't want to get into like bylaws and governance and tax paperwork and stuff like that for becoming an organization. And I think we've talked a bit about this, about kind of how we see our mission being different from others and what that looks like. So I don't think I'll go on to this one too much longer unless someone has an additional thought that we didn't capture previously. Okay. All right. I want to show you one model before we get into working groups, so I can explain to you what I mean by working groups. And I have been going on a little bit about the American Kinesiology Association only because they're so similar in size and scope than what we've done, and they're about a year ahead of us in terms of what they were trying to work on. So their model was for their learning outcomes and core elements of their curricular guidelines. They had a working group of 5 to 6 people that had monthly conference calls and worked on this for about a year and brought the findings and suggestions back to the next year's meeting. So what I would envision is we are hopefully going to be doing something similar, where we would have a working group for core concepts, a working group for the professional skills that are operating in some sense separately for now, and hopefully we'd have one of the planning committee people would be the chair of that. So envisioning monthly conference calls and some work in between as we work on this for about a year going into the next meeting that's at Minnesota. It took them 2 years total, and you can visit their website to see what they came up with their core concepts. They did develop some rubrics for departmental self-assessment. They developed some learning outcomes and just general advice about best practices. And I think their website is simple and to the point, and it's easy to follow. And I would encourage you to look at that. But just knowing the time frame. So this was sort of a 1 to 2 year process overall to get this done, and it was done in small working groups. And so when I'm asking here about doing some working group things, and we ask if you're interested in doing that, again, the 2 would be a subgroup of people working on the core concepts part of the guidelines, subset working on the professional skills, and you could write your name down on that sheet of paper in the center of the table if you would like. We'll collect that at the end. Yeah, and this is I updated the slides so that I would have that in there, but I don't know what happened to them. Let me see if I can get back to the presentation files and open the other one. Because I did actually had a way to designate this on here. Let me see. Because it was an old set of things. That's what happens when you update on the fly. From the back of the room. Oops. Let me see if this has that in there. Oh, because we're recording on Panopto. Sorry. Can't really do that. Let me see if this is the new one. Yeah. Actually, I guess I didn't capture that. But yeah, if you could just write like CC for core concepts or professional skills next to the group that you're interested in. And then also on that same sheet of paper, the other things, if you want to write help Jenny, help Mary Pat, help Dee. So HAPS objectives, core concepts work, leap up, question testing. If you're interested in working with anybody on that, if you could just print your name on there, that would be fantastic. And that's how we'll move forward with getting these guidelines finalized. So we are going to draw from the survey data from students. We are going to hopefully get some buy-in from assessing core concepts use within the departments to help inform the work over the next year. And our goal would be to present those findings to you guys who can attend at the meeting next year. Okay. Yeah. All right. And I think that's it. So I wish that I had those updated slides that I wanted to show you, but that's okay.
No, while you're doing that, Ken, those of you that are interested in doing the core concepts, what we teach, put your name on the same list and just write that next to it, assessing what we teach in terms of the core concepts. just describe that if you're willing to do that. I have 3 volunteers so far.
That's okay. That's all right. I had a couple other fancy slides on there, but that's the bulk of the discussion stuff that we wanted to get through in terms of that. So the remaining thing is before we like do a final wrap up, I did actually want to give Lisa a chance to say some information about her and Vincent, who are going to host our meeting next year.
So I opted not to do slides. We would just really, really love it if you would come to Minneapolis next year. Our department chair, Joe Metzger, is just on fire about this group and really wants to support us in that. Minneapolis is really nice in June. I think we're thinking about it. Are we thinking about a June meeting?
So what we'll do is we'll be sending out a survey after the meeting, which we did with this one, and saying, is this timing working for you? Send some sort of potential dates if you would like to give us your vote on when works out. This timing definitely worked out much better for many people than having it earlier in May.
Yeah.
It was kind of chaotic for a lot of people. So I get the sense that this timing was definitely better than
Yeah.
last. But the way that we'll get that figured out is by getting input from you guys, asking for feedback on the post survey.
Yeah, and I think the sense is we really like meeting on a campus, and there are lots of direct flights to Minneapolis. You hop on the light rail. You don't have to get a taxi, and we have this beautiful, beautiful active learning building, Brunix Hall, and I would love it if we could have the meeting in an active learning classroom using active learning techniques with a room full of whiteboards. So as we're working in groups, you're writing on the wall and that sort of thing. And so I would just love to have you come and continue all the really great stuff that's happened here. It's just a joy to being among colleagues and to feel the excitement of the ideas, but the mutual respect, to really feel respected and valued by your peers and those sorts of things. That's just a shot in the arm, and how grateful I am to this group and all these wonderful colleagues to interact with. So we need to be thinking about thinking about that survey and thinking about what kind of things we're interested in talking about what's going on in lab and what a lab even means, and what we need to do in terms of advising. And I don't know if a survey question about possible speakers that we could start contacting. And I don't have anything more than that to say. Please come to Minneapolis. We'll though Claudia has set the bar pretty high.
Thank you. I think it's the whole team. The team we had was wonderful, and everyone contributed, which was great. But what I wanted to say is the survey really matters. The after the meeting survey and your feedback on the things that you would like to see, we really took that and shaped this meeting based on that. And I think it's important that you do that and you go through it. And if you do have ideas for speakers, that would be excellent. That would be great. So that we're all engaged and we're not sitting back and feeling like this wasn't what I wanted, right? So I think this has been hopefully what you wanted because you told us this is what you wanted. It really, well, the majority, right? What the data that we got. So I'm just telling you that it's important to fill those out. I know we get a lot of those our way, but just keep that in mind because it really makes a difference.
Okay. So then the one other thing I wanted to just remind you of, the PMIG website has all of the presentations and audio from the 2017 meeting, if you ever wish to look back at them. We're processing the recordings from the lectures here. In the meantime, everything is on the Google Doc. Everyone's slides, CVs, a bunch of papers, vision and change, Jenny's core concepts work. A lot of this stuff is available. Dee sent the medical objectives from APS. So everything's on this drive. We'll resend you the link with the post survey so you can have access to that again. But we will also finalize processing the audio recordings if you want to revisit any of the talks. That'll be available to you coming soon. And we'll send you an email when that's ready to go. And yeah, Val's been feverishly taking meeting minutes back there too. All right, so Claudia, before we say thank you to you, do you want to tell us about dinner?
For those of you who are planning to join us for dinner, we're going to go to the hub downtown, and we're going to take the streetcar, and the streetcar station is right in front of Gentle Ben's, the restaurant we were at last night. And I'd like us to meet at 5:40. Our reservation is at 6 o'clock, so that gives you time to go, if you want to go to the bookstore, grab something, or maybe go to the room, whatever you need to do. So 5:40 meeting at the station, and then we can all go together. We're going to be buying the tickets, so we all need to be together. They won't seat us until our whole party is together. So just want you to know, if you're not planning to come, you change your mind or we might have an issue sitting down, getting our seats. So I'd like, if anything changed, to update our list, and then I can call them. But it's at 6 o'clock, and parking is a little bit iffy on downtown. Maybe now is not as busy, but it is Friday. So I would say the streetcar is a good option. It doesn't take long to get there, and it's kind of a fun little thing to do. So anything else that I should add? Any questions? 5:40, yeah. And this one is, so we'll at the streetcar, at the station in front of Gentle Ben's. That way I can buy tickets for everybody and we can all go. And the reservation is at 6. So if you are planning to drive, maybe let me know so that I'm not wondering. So I'm not going, we're short a few people and we don't want to leave without them. So just let me know if you're planning to drive. Anything else, I guess? Any questions about that? So this one is not covered by the conference, and just wanting to let you know they will do split checks for us. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So that's the last thing to say. First of all, is just thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to be here. Thank you for your passion and dedication to the work. Thank you for your honest input and feedback. I mean, the room is just full of positive energy, and I am grateful and honored to be part of making a space for this to happen. It's wonderful. And I definitely want to recognize, again, clearly the work of the local planning committee here at Arizona. So thank you very much, Claudia, Cindy, John, Linda, everybody. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you. And also we have gifts up here to John, Linda, Val, to Claudia. We have some thank you gifts for you up here for all of your efforts. So really thank you from the bottom of my heart, you guys, for all the work that you've done, and it's really wonderful. So thank you. So with that, that's the official close of PMIG 2018. And for those of you who can stay for dinner, we look forward to having you there. And the rest of you, safe travels, and we will see you next year. Thank you.